we have built a great brand and great partnerships, simply starting with the desire and building on the platform to build loyalty in an industry where we've been traditionally very transactional. So looking at things through the consumer's lens, which I would argue very few tech partners in the multifamily space have really approached any business or solving any problem, looking at the consumer first, which is our collective customer. We all love to say that we're in real estate, but the reality is we are in the people business, we are in the housing business. And if we can solve problems and bring solutions to renters and prospects, it makes it easier on our on-site teams and ultimately makes all of us more profitable.
Hi, this is Matt Sleppen, and welcome to Leading Voices in Real Estate. Today's episode, recorded on May 28th, is a conversation with Margette Hepfner and Sam Bakshandehpour from Bilt, which is the hospitality and rewards platform for the multifamily business. I'll let Margette and Sam describe the Bilt business and where it sits in the multifamily ecosystem in the show. The emerging theme for me, and I'll give several data points from this episode, the prior episode with Jay Parsons, also in the apartment business, and what I learned last week at the ULI Multifamily Council meeting, the emerging theme for me is that the industry is and has got to keep moving towards a more customer-focused orientation. No surprise that this resonates with me, since I've been talking about the importance of business platform versus just the assets and transactions forever, and this drives it home. This is the point of today's discussion about Bilt, and it doubles down on the point that Jay and I discussed, that there's marginal consolidation of ownership in the apartment business, but significant consolidation among operators, meaning that where the rubber meets the road in interacting with our customers, sophistication, platform technology, and the ability to deliver hospitality is in many ways what will differentiate. If it does happen, I think this is the meaning of the rumored EQR Avalon Bay merger and the meaning of the buzz at ULI, where folks were talking about all of these platform mergers in addition to EQR AVB, also Bell Partners and BGO, Security Properties leaving property management and transferring it to Pizzuto, Saris Regis combining with Millhouse, Rangewater's third-party business spinning out, and I know there's more happening. And I heard a great statistic at the cocktail party from a friend about his company, which is a vertically integrated owner-operator, benefiting from the vertical integration as demonstrated by what he called his favorite statistic. Last year, across the portfolio, they raised rents 10%, at the same time as increasing their Aura score, which is a measurement of customer reviews, by 8%. How do you achieve both? It's all about service, and those numbers, both on rent raise and customer reviews, hopefully less turn increases NOI. Boom! Service, customer orientation, business platform. It all matters. And I'll go one deeper and tie this to industry reputation and regulatory risk. As an industry, we got to be unhated out there, or it will be just too easy to enact rent control and other business and supply inhibitors. Let's watch how our best leaders focus both on their firm's reputations and also contribute to efforts around industry reputation. We got to be unhated. And by the way, our next episode is with the dean of the Cornell Hotel School, where we dial in more on hospitality, i.e. customer service, as a theme across the real estate business, not just hotels. So I hope that you enjoy this conversation with Margette and Sam. If you missed the Jay Parsons episode, listen to these as a pair as you think about the business. And if you find these conversations illuminating, then share these episodes and others in the series with your colleagues. If you'd like to learn more about ZRG and how we can help you in your real estate business through retained search, interim search, embedded recruiting, business consulting, and advisory, please connect with me at msleppen@zrgpartners.com. Enjoy the show. Well, welcome to Leading Voices in Real Estate. I am here today with Margette and with Sam. We're going to do last names in a few minutes. And you're both with Bilt, the hospitality platform for multifamily. And I want to understand what that is, what it means for residents in the apartment who live in apartments, what it means for the apartment industry, and what it means maybe for all the noise that we hear these days about the renter experience not being what it should be. And maybe you guys are working to help our industry resolve some of that stuff. So thrilled to have you on the show, and welcome. And maybe each of you briefly introduce yourselves so that our guests hear your voices. Margette?
Sure. I'm Margette Hepfner. I'm the president of housing for Bilt. I joined Bilt over the summer. I've been in multifamily real estate for about 26 years and was most recently the chief operating officer at Willowbridge Property Company. So I spent the last 12 years on the operator side, which is exactly why I am sitting in the seat that I'm sitting in today.
Cool. And I'll be really curious to hear about how this fits with multifamily operations and property management. And Willowbridge, also formerly known as Lincoln, one of the
Correct?
largest third party property managers in the country.
Correct.
Cool.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, excited
Sam.
to be here.
Thank you for having me on. I'm thrilled to be here as well. My name is Sam Bakshandehpour. I'm the president of merchants for Bilt. I joined in February, had been an advisor for a couple years prior. Before joining Bilt, I was the CEO of two companies. First, Jose Andres Group, where we ran 50 restaurants across 9 markets. And prior to Jose Andres Group, I was CEO of a hospitality platform, SPE Entertainment, which had 80 properties across hotels under the SLS flag, restaurants, and nightlife. And I started my career in real estate investment banking, covering the hotel and casino sectors at JP Morgan.
Wow, lots to unpack there because I'm curious, particularly about you say hospitality, and then you're merging together entertainment, restaurants, hospitality, and now you're here. The next guest on Leading Voices is Kate Walsh, who's the dean of the Cornell School for Hotels. And I'm going to be there to lobby her to start a multifamily property management track at Cornell because I think we need it.
Oh, that would be amazing.
Wouldn't that be cool?
It would be. It
Okay.
is something that we've talked about in multifamily for so many years, and I would argue that we don't act like we know the first thing about hospitality in our actual practice.
Okay, so what is Bilt? And let's start high level with an explanation, and we're going to drive all over the place on the company.
Sure. That is a really good question, and I think that one of the challenges that we see in the industry is that people have made up their own. They have a perception about Bilt. We obviously have a co-branded credit card. There have been some misconceptions and misunderstandings of who we are and what we do. But I would say the most important part is that we have built a great brand and great partnerships, simply starting with the desire and building on the platform to build loyalty in an industry where we've been traditionally very transactional. So looking at things through the consumer's lens, which I would argue very few tech partners in the multifamily space have really approached any business or solving any problem, looking at the consumer first, which is our collective customer. We all love to say that we're in real estate, but the reality is we are in the people business, we are in the housing business. And if we can solve problems and bring solutions to renters and prospects, it makes it easier on our on-site teams and ultimately makes all of us more profitable. So that's where Bilt started, and started simply through the lens of how do we make rent more rewarding for renters? Starting with how can we earn rewards on the largest monthly payment that each one of us has, whether that's our rent or now our mortgage. And then more importantly, until Bilt came into the landscape, you couldn't report your rent payments to the credit bureaus to help build your credit. So as we look at renting, and if the goal of renting is to get to home ownership for some people, for others, it may be just to rent for their entire lives. Why can you not build your credit while you're writing that rent check? Because the fact of the matter is, most renters are actually paying their rent. So it would be a positive for them to report those rent payments and be able to build their credit. So that's where we've started. And then I look forward to, I think we can weave into the conversation over the next hour where we've grown and what that means to all of our 6.5 million members, all of our housing partners, and then our 45,000 merchants that's continuing to grow.
Okay, so you said 6.5 million members, 45,000 merchants, and how many partners who are owners? Maybe those are the three legs of the stool.
So about 70% of the top 50 multifamily operators are partners with us. It's about 1 in 4 multifamily homes. So 1 in 4 apartments are partnered with Bilt.
Okay, and when you say 1 in 4, 1 in 4 relates to properties of institutional scale, or 1 of 4 renters in the entire universe of renters?
Yep. No, great question. So When you look at the National Multi-Housing Council, National Apartment Association, and then even some of the small IREM and some of the smaller groups that represent not necessarily institutional owners, but professional property managers, that
Mhm.
landscape, that number that we use in the industry is about 20 million, give or take. Obviously it's growing at a slight clip. So not all renters across the US, but when you're looking at those institutionally and professionally operated, it's about 20 million.
Okay, and you're about a quarter of that at the moment
Yes,
and growing quickly.
and growing quickly.
Okay, and I did a podcast a couple of years ago with Isuzu, which does a credit platform as well. I don't know if they do rewards, but that's a similar on the credit side. That is also happening there and probably some other places.
That's correct. So there are quite a few other partners that platforms where you can pay
Mhm.
to report your rent payments to the credit bureaus. Bilt doesn't charge for that. We don't believe that you should be charged, and you're already writing a check, right? Why should we charge you additional money? And then more importantly, why should we or why should owners or operators be making additional revenue off of a renter simply to report their credit bureaus? Their rent payments to the credit bureaus. It doesn't cost us anything. So
Mhm.
there are a number of different groups that charge for that. Bilt does not.
Okay, fair deal. And on the reward side, if we just, I want to think headlines of this
Sure.
and think of who the renters are, because the renters range greatly from the upscale renters to the missing middle renters to low income renters. And maybe the low income renters and some of the missing middles never had the opportunity for rewards except for carrying a bunch of coffee cards around. Someone's going to
Yep.
shoot me for putting it that
Oh,
way.
okay. You know what? I fit Matt. I would like to, I think that we've clearly had conversations and didn't realize we were having conversations
Uh huh.
because I will say at Lincoln Willowbridge. So when we first were introduced to Bilt and the opportunities with Bilt on the loyalty and the reward side of it, those 2 points that you made were the two things that were really important to me. Bilt was bringing the opportunity to participate in a rewards program of some sort to our renters, to lower income, middle income renters that really have not had that opportunity. They're probably not traveling a lot. They don't hold a lot of credit cards, and the credit cards they do hold are probably very specifically for maybe it's a particular airline or somewhere where they can use some of those points, but they've not really had the opportunity to tap into and leverage those reward points, like those in the upper middle class or who are traveling a lot for a variety of different reasons. So that to me was really appealing from a resident experience perspective, being able to bring something to our renters that they didn't have access to before, and Bilt created that. And without the need to get another credit card, it is simply using any credit card or debit card that you currently have to build points, not just on rent, but as you're shopping,
As
dining
well.
in your neighborhood, right? And then the second part is that we talk about loyalty and hospitality in the multifamily industry, and we have all spent millions and millions of dollars trying to create a brand that we think renters may attach themselves to, that may resonate with them, much like Bonvoy or United Airlines or any of the other partners, right? But the fact is that we are much too fragmented as an industry, and we're also too transactional. So it doesn't allow a renter the ability to actually attach themselves to a brand that
Mhm.
they know and love, because they could choose to sign a contract or a lease with a particular brand that they think they love today, but they don't have any control over whether or not that brand manages their property tomorrow. So we've made it really hard for renters to attach themselves to a brand. I think of Bilt as just like Marriott Bonvoy, right? Or an alliance that is bringing multiple owners and operators together on the multifamily side to form an alliance and a partnership to help elevate
Mhm.
the industry and their brand.
I totally get it. And Sam, we're going to come to you in a few minutes, but we're talking insider baseball here about the apartment industry And so I tried to create, this is 30 years ago, I think, give or take. I tried to create a database for the apartment industry as an early industry wide effort. And this is 30 years ago when data, no one knew what data was and what it was worth and what it meant. And the companies in the industry said, no, we're going to do it ourselves. And none of them had that much scale way back when. And none of them could know what to do with data if they had it. But they said, no, I'm going to go it alone. And the go it alone might still fit because the bigger apartment owners might say, I don't need you to do this, but they have signed up with you to do this because they haven't succeeded at a brand or a Bonvoy or either of those. So an alliance works better for them than going it alone. Was that
It
a tough
absolutely
sell?
it absolutely does. You know what? It wasn't a tough sell. So Tim Byrne put an article about Bilt on my desk in 2019 and
Mm,
said, "Hey, they're coming in to meet with us." They were in their early fundraising, right? And my first thought, my immediate thought was, it's about time someone figured this out. And it was almost 4 years before we signed up with Bilt, but it wasn't because we didn't believe in it. We were partnering with Ankur and the co-founders to build out the product and give feedback to build something better and different than we had all tried to build internally for ourselves.
okay. I want to ask more questions about this, although you should have done Tim Burns' voice in, because I
Oh, I
think he
should
came
have.
into your office and told you to do this in the, sorry, Tim, but in very heavy way. So Sam, let's turn to you because you're from the hospitality business. We're injecting hospitality into multifamily. With what you've done, you've created a coalition or an alliance of a critical mass in multifamily to enable hospitality to come. What brought you into this? How did you get sold to do this now that we're thinking about it that way?
Yeah, look, when you look back on my 30-year career, I've always sat at the intersection of real estate and hospitality. And those that have embraced hospitality successfully have been able to drive NOI and asset value. And whether it's a casino or a hotel, retail, or in this case, multifamily, baking in the right hospitality experience enhances people's attraction to that type of real estate.
Hmm.
And for the last 15 years as an operator, I've lived primarily in hotels and spent a lot of time with my friends who are the big hotel owners, similar conversation to the big multifamily owners, saying, how do we drive room rate? And, their RevPAR is the highest margin business. And the way you do that is by activating the common spaces with restaurants and bars and enhancing the guest experience.
Hmm.
Why do they pay the tax to bring a Marriott Bonvoy? Because Marriott Bonvoy can not only drive traffic and fill the rooms, but through their branding and curation of the experience, they're able to enhance what ultimately will allow more people to pay more dollars to stay at a Bonvoy hotel. We're doing something similar at Built, but for the entire neighborhood. And that value proposition to me was something no one has been able to successfully tackle, where the hub starts with housing, where your major life decisions are made the minute you move into an apartment or a home in your neighborhood. But ultimately, for recognition and loyalty, it is one disjointed ecosystem. Whereas Margette said so perfectly, I'm loyal to Marriott Bonvoy, I'm loyal to United, so on and so forth. And Built comes in as the orchestration layer on top, saying, look, maintain your loyalty to the brands that you care about. We're going to curate that experience and enhance that experience across the neighborhood and then beyond, tying it into your travel. And think of it like this, Matt. The center of the universe of Built is housing. It's the largest housing platform, but it's also the largest commerce platform because the first circle is housing. The next concentric circle is your neighborhood. And the circle after that is travel. My job is to look after the neighborhood and the travel to make sure we have the right strategic partnerships and a product that is developed tying housing to the neighborhood to travel.
Wow. So that's a big leap for me from what we were talking about before, which I have a renter, I have an apartment building. I'm getting them loyalty points for paying rent. I get that. Now I'm trying to tie it to the neighborhood and how the neighborhood feels warmer to people. And let's start there. Travel, maybe we'll get there.
Sure.
But think about how does that neighborhood connectivity happen besides, again, well, we can get you 10% off at this coffee place or 10% off at this restaurant? How does that
Yeah,
create warmth and stickiness?
take the percent off the table, because as you said, that's a commodity and that actually
Mm,
cheapens the experience in so many ways.
hmm
Think of three key decisions you need to make the minute you move into a neighborhood. Where's the local pharmacy I'm going to? Where do I go eat? And then what do I do to work it off and go to get a workout in? Now, all of a sudden, with the Bilt Concierge, which is the B2C platform that we've launched, we're connecting those decisions back to your home. And to be able to seamlessly curate an experience where my prescriptions are at the local pharmacy and I go in and I now have recognition to I'm able to tap in, get a local reservation. And when I show up, they know I'm a Bilt member and the chef touches the table or the merchant turns on a Lyft ride to pick me up from my apartment to the restaurant. And the next day, when I sign up to go to Y7 and do a yoga class, I'm welcome with a mat rental. And it's these little touches that, again, go beyond a percentage off or a free treat here or there, but it's recognition and loyalty that now all of a sudden, through the Built Concierge, the entire neighborhood experience has been tied to my home. And that makes me want to come back more frequently
hmm
as a user, which is why merchants love us.
I'm in DC at the moment. I'm in an Airbnb. You can see the beautiful decoration behind me, cherry blossoms. And we went to a restaurant around the corner from here that I've now been to 4 times. New York Times top 50 restaurant. Maybe it has a star, and I don't think it does. And they don't know who I am. The fourth time, and it's an expensive place to go. And I'm pissed off. No, I don't want them to know too much, but I want them to know enough to just say, hey,
Bingo.
welcome back. It's good to see you again. Like last time you had the steak, you want that again, or whatever it is, right? But it's actually easy and massively easy to do given technology.
If you think about that example, Matt, right now, restaurants are relying on loyalty programs, which are very archaic in their thesis. It's an if then statement. If Matt wasn't tagged as a regular at this DC institution, no one knows that Matt's there. And if he was, then you do this. We shouldn't have to rely on the manual inputting of tags in a loyalty program to know that this is Matt's fourth visit to the restaurant. Because if that restaurant was on the Built ecosystem, we integrate with the reservation platform. Whether you made it through OpenTable or Resi, Matt's profile is now unlocked. Built member, he's coming into the restaurant. There's recognition right there. If we didn't even catch it on the reservation, let's say someone else made the reservation, and it's
Right.
still Matt's fourth time. Upon checkout, the minute you tap to pay, all of a sudden, Matt paid, it unlocks Matt's profile. We know where you come from. We know how many reservations you've made. And again, at that point, there could be recognition to get you back in or just a thank you, a warm embrace and recognition that right now you said, I've been there 4 times and they don't know who I want. And we're not even going to go overboard to say we know your likes and dislikes, just acknowledgement that this is your 4th time and we appreciate you.
Right. Well, I think we're going to geek out on this because every listener has been through this stuff. My wife had made the reservation this time and they don't know we're married, but it's been a while. But Resi didn't figure that out. Okay, we're off subject. And another word came into my mind because if I go to that fancy restaurant, this is like another really gross comment, Margette, you're going to like laugh at this. But the other person says to themselves, I'm just a renter. He owns his house. I'm just a renter. But now just a renter might even have a better way of being involved in the neighborhood than I do, which is really awesome. That changes the dynamic of that just a renter thing that is not real, but it is real. Margette, any comments to that?
It does change the dynamic. You think about different marketplaces it kind of depends on the city and the location, but as in a lot of cities, as a renter, you are not connected. There are certain things you can't vote on because you're not a property owner, right? Why in the world is that?
Mhm.
So, and again, I think that goes back to why 8 years ago were your rent payments not reported to the credit bureau? So there's a long history and story there, but they absolutely should be for so many reasons. But renters are part of the neighborhood, just like homeowners are. and equally so depending upon what city you're in.
Huge part of the neighborhood, of course. And
Huge part of
and
the neighborhood.
let's double click on this. So let's stick on the subject, which we were going to talk about later. And I say this on every other podcast, but the two of the negative words in the English language are landlord and developer, and they describe our industry, but our industry doesn't need to be perceived as sucky. We could be perceived as good citizens. And we've struggled with that, particularly in the apartment industry, which right now is I saw a new headline today. MAA got sued for junk fees or something like this. So we're stubbing our toes without creating goodwill in the industry, and maybe we can't do it alone, so we have to do it through an alliance. This is a softball. But
I
how
do.
does this help that?
Yeah, Matt. So it's a couple of things. First, why we continue to be called landlords and we call our residents tenants and all of the law, those things need to change. And I think softening landlord, tenant, and conversations around those pieces of it are really important. One of the things that truly impressed me about what Ankur, David, Dan, and the team had done are things that we probably don't talk about enough. And one of the things that I'm excited to be on the Bilt team and to be able to advocate in ways that the industry has not been able to advocate before. So we talk about advocating, and a lot of it is lobbying, making sure that NMHC, NAA, the Housing Coalition are in front of our lawmakers. But more importantly, we need to make sure that we're leveraging and building better relationships with consumers. So again, and I'll go back to building your rent payment, building your credit with your rent payments. But then more importantly, we do a lot of exciting things around rent day, which has led to better results for our owners and our operators. On the first of every month, we have a rent day competition. It is a game show. This month, Anne Hathaway is our guest with Ankur. It just happens to be that Rent Day, May 1st, is also the release of The Devil Wears Prada, too. So that's pretty exciting. We would love to say that she did that for us. It just is so perfectly timed. But we give free rent away to at least 10 renters on a monthly basis. We are doing things in the neighborhood to better help connect renters with if they've fallen on hard times. So we have a Bilt Foundation that actually has the ability to connect renters to resources in their neighborhood, locally or even nationally, to help with them if they've fallen on red times or on hard times. So there are a lot of opportunities for Bilt to help to shift the narrative without it being an ad campaign talking about landlords are not terrible people, right? So really just starting to shift that narrative so that renters feel great about where they live, that owners are better connected and operators are better connected to their renters. Just like Sam was talking about restaurants knowing you better when you walk in the door, our owners and operators should know their residents better. So Bilt, with the hospitality platform that we've built out and that we're continuing to develop, is allowing them to better serve their residents in a way that they've not been able to before. So the data has always could exist there, but they've never known what to do with it. So between the platform that we've built and then the concierge layer that's on top of it, we're telling operators whose birthday's coming up. Hey, you have 20 units that are up for renewal in the next 120 days. Let's send them their renewals early, and they can do it literally with a click of a button. They just set it up and the system does it for them. So it's very proactively reaching out to renters on, again, so let's say birthdays, the anniversary of their lease, to send them their renewal. The faster we get renewal decisions, whether we know the person is going to stay or we know they're moving out and we can put that unit back on the market, that has incremental value to the bottom line, because we typically, if you know 60 days in advance that someone's moving out, you can turn that unit faster, you can lease it faster, and you're not losing revenue on a daily basis.
So I was with the CEO of a nonprofit housing group about 8 months ago, and I was talking to him about his goals and objectives. And he said, my goal is to have the best relationships with my tenants, my residents, of any nonprofit owner. And I said, I have a feeling you don't actually have a one-to-one relationship with your residents. You probably don't know who they are and you can't connect with them one-to-one. And I told him about Funnel,
Mhm.
which is another program in this world, and Funnel does connect people one-to-one to not just the building, but now to the owner.
Correct.
And he was surprised by that, and I think it opened his eyes to go, "Oh, maybe I don't have a one-to-one relationship with
Yeah.
all of these 6,000 residents," or whatever the number is. And so who has that relationship when they work with you? Is that your relationship, and are they nervous about losing the relationship to you, or are you facilitating the owner's relationship with the residents, or
We're
both?
We're facilitating that relationship. So, yes, they're Bilt members and there's a connection to Bilt, but I'll use an example. We'll use that example of the nonprofit owner and his 6,000 residents. And what some of the CRMs and the CRM that you mentioned is probably connecting. If you lived at one of his properties 2 years ago and then you moved back in, I think some of the newer CRMs are kind of connecting the dots, but that's only a piece of the entire story. So Bilt has the ability, let's say I was still at Willowbridge and I wanted to launch a campaign to any Willowbridge resident who had lived at a Willowbridge property for the last 3 years. I have the ability to do that because of Bilt. Bilt is facilitating that across the entire Willowbridge portfolio, regardless of what asset they've lived at. Let's say
You
they
did not have that ability at Willowbridge before Built existed. Is that true?
that is correct.
Third biggest property manager in the country, no one-to-one relationships.
No one-to-one relationship, because the way most of our systems are built out in the industry, they are attached to the asset itself and they do not follow the renter from one property to another for a
Mhm.
variety of different reasons. Because you can't have two Bilt memberships, and because of the ID verification that we do on the front end, we've reduced the amount of fraud that's in the industry, and then we're able to connect the dots. So if you've lived at a Willowbridge property 2 years ago and then you moved out and then you moved back into a Willowbridge property, I don't know where you were in between, but upon signing that lease or even upon filling out the application, I am then prompted with, hey, Matt was a previous resident and I can welcome you back to Willowbridge. And that makes you, so going back to the story that you were telling about the restaurant, that leasing agent immediately knows that you used to be a Willowbridge resident and you're coming back to Willowbridge.
Mhm, mhm. And so let's keep playing this at the property and the owner level and what
Sure.
they, or the manager level, and what they get from this. And then I want to talk about who gets paid for what. There's some money flowing around here somewhere and some benefits flowing around. I've been in office buildings where they say, come into our office building portal because, gosh, we're going to have ice cream parties in the lobby or something. And it didn't resonate with me the last time I was in an office building that that was an opportunity. Maybe apartment owners have attempted to do this on their own, but it couldn't have the resonance or depth of what you're able to offer them.
Yes.
So think about that. Think about renewals and then statistics of loyalty, and is the loyalty bottom lining to your owner participants?
Sure. So we have all, and this is not exclusive to multifamily, but we have tried to create apps for our properties to keep our residents connected and engaging with those apps. But the reality is, and this goes back to what Sam was talking about the home being the center of everything that we do, but 80% of what we spend outside of our rent or mortgage payment happens within about 2 miles of where we live. And all of our property apps, if they're just a property app, regardless of how much you try to connect with vendors and merchants that happen to be in your local neighborhood, individually, you don't have the ability to really build those relationships. And most people are coming into their property app to pay their rent on a monthly basis. Hopefully, they're not submitting a maintenance request every single month. And then what are the other reasons? Maybe their packages are in the
Mhm.
property app. Maybe they submit an away notice. Maybe they can book an amenity in their property app. They might have to go to a different app to book an amenity. Bilt has built, so you have your foundation of your PMS, which is the most important piece. And we've built the orchestration layer on top of that, that is our hospitality layer, that connects everything from first tour all the way through renewal. So everything you're doing, living in your home and around your neighborhood, can happen inside the Bilt app. You go in to pay your rent. You're going to a core power yoga class. You're going to Soul Cycle. You go to Wall. You are transferring your Bilt points to United Airlines. You're playing the rent day game. Everything that you're doing for your life lives in the Bilt app. And we've orchestrated all of that because no one's going to go in their property app on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason to. And I don't, and we've been trying to force that, which is not natural behavior.
What does the owner not get if it's yours, if particularly the owner thinks they're going to move to another one of their properties in their next step? Where does the owner loyalty come in and the brand of that owner?
Sure. So let's say I'm living in a Willowbridge property and I'm coming up for renewal, and I get my renewal in the Bilt. It's a push notification from Bilt that says, hey, you're up for renewal. Here's your renewal offer. I've decided that I need more space, or I'm moving from Dallas to New York City. Our platform has the ability to surface, let's say I just needed a larger unit. Hey, you're in a 900 square foot apartment. We have a 1,200 square foot apartment on the same property that could fit your needs. Is this something you're interested in? Or you're moving from Dallas to New York, moving out of a Willowbridge property, but Willowbridge has these 3 assets in Manhattan that look like they could be a fit for you. Would you like to transfer to one of those properties? So because we are connected not just to the asset, but to the operator, the property management company, we have the ability to surface their properties to their residents to keep them in their own ecosystem.
So it's you're many things here. I'm trying to figure all of these out at one time. One of the things that you are is a multifamily owner software property management operations platform that interfaces with the residents.
We're the orchestration layer on top of all of your operations.
Oh, it's one ring to fit them all. I like that.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So therefore, let's playing this example out of Willowbridge, but let's change the name, call it Avalon Bay, call it EQR. I'm thinking of REITs. I love to think of REITs.
Sure.
Do you then prioritize for that renter when they say, hey, I need 1,100 square foot unit, either the building or another property from that owner? Or if they're moving, you first prioritize other properties by that owner? That's built
Yes.
into the
That's correct.
algorithms.
That's correct. And it's not even algorithms, it's just part of the ecosystem. So you're currently in the Avalon Bay ecosystem. We're going to surface Avalon Bay assets. Now, if it's in a market where Avalon Bay doesn't have any properties,
Right.
clearly we will surface things. Yeah, and focusing on not marketing like a traditional ILS or even our traditional marketing, surfacing things that actually matter to the resident. And it's the same thing. So when we think about merchants in your neighborhood, right? And you think about when a resident moves into a new home, all of the merchants in the neighborhood are clamoring to get to that resident, right? And traditionally, Sam, the only way, how would merchants reach new people that have moved into a neighborhood? How do they do it before Bilt, and how do they do it with Bilt?
Well, I think we're all the same vintage and can remember the drawer that had menus in it, and you'd pull out 50 menus from local merchants and decide, are we having Chinese or pizza tonight? Very manual, very manual. And the most critical point for merchants to reach the new members who've moved into the neighborhood was in that moment in time upon move-in. We've automated all that.
So let's go back to the just a renter thing, because it's really interesting. All of a sudden, the just a renters are kind of a unified group and a unified market that can be attacked by the owners and the merchants, because both of them care here. And if I'm a homeowner, I'm feeling disadvantaged because my realtor is not turning you over to you're not turning me over to the local merchants in a sophisticated way when I buy a home. So your ecosystems might be stronger.
So 2 things. We have just recently launched in the mortgage space. So UWM is our first partner that we've launched with. We have a number of investors in the mortgage space as well. If you're looking for a home, you can find a home to buy in the Bilt ecosystem as well. So, but more importantly, Matt, anyone can be a Bilt member. So you do not have to pay your rent or pay your mortgage through the Bilt app. And as a Bilt member, you are still in that ecosystem and connected to the restaurants and the merchants. So going back to your restaurant example at the very beginning of the conversation, you don't have to pay your rent or your mortgage through Bilt. If you're a Bilt member, we connect all of the dots for the merchant.
Got it. And Sam, we talked a little bit about Bonvoy. You've mentioned this, and you're a hotel guy, hospitality guy. So I want to think about what it takes for the apartment industry, if that's where you're starting. We're going to talk about your next places. Would you just hinted at one or referred to one? And my last podcast was with Jay Parsons, and we talked all about multifamily and the fragmentation of the business. And I said, why can't we be a Bonvoy? Why can't we be one of the 4 hotel brands or whatever the 4 big ones are? I know what they are, but with the 4 big ones, we're picking on Bonvoy today. But how close are you to that becoming unified in this sector to create some of the power of that business?
Very, very close. And we have launched this with the intent of Bonvoy knows your habits within the 4 walls of Bonvoy. And that's the limitation. Bonvoy is a wonderful program. Coincidentally, I'm sitting in a Bonvoy property. It's an autograph collection hotel here in Coral Gables. I'm loyal to Bonvoy. And where Bonvoy hits a wall is what happens when I leave these 4 walls of the hotel? Bonvoy doesn't do anything for me. And it's very limited. I can still be loyal to Bonvoy, but also be loyal to fill in the blank with multiple other platforms. And if, again, going back to Margette's example, if the center of decision-making is housing, and you have that knowledge as a person moves from student housing to being their first property in Manhattan with their first job to ultimately a homeowner, or they enter the ecosystem through credit card, or they enter the ecosystem through tap to pay at the end of a meal. Once you're in the ecosystem, you now have a reach in the neighborhood and travel beyond the 4 walls of individual loyalty programs, because it ultimately integrates into various platforms. If this can be proven out, which we're in the process of doing and successfully executing with housing, the extension of that loyalty is now into your neighborhood.
Right.
And that's ultimately where we come in, as Margette has said, an orchestration layer that sits on top of all of these disjointed loyalty programs and ecosystems.
It's the other word that comes up a lot right now in hospitality is experiences. And Bonvoy may or may not give you those experiences. And I see like on Airbnb, I'll go, okay, here's a thing you could do or a thing you could do. But when it's a great thing you could do, where they know you and they welcome you, it's an extraordinary experience.
Yeah, the experiential culture is only enhancing. When you think about all of the tools that are available to us in our toolkit, we're able to, for any merchant and any building, put together and curate an experience that tracks along different verticals. What do I mean by that? If I'm able to have a car picking me up from the hotel, taking me to a restaurant where I'm treated like a 4th-time regular, and upon checkout, having an offer to go do a yoga class the next day, that right there, if you package that together, what Bilt does, it's a white glove concierge that's personalized for that merchant. And in the case of the merchant being housing, depending on, again, from student housing to owners to rentals, doesn't matter. If you're trying to fill those 20 units that Margette talked about, depending on the price point in the building, you can personalize an experience and deliver it to that tenant to say, are you interested in tapping into this? Car's waiting for you tonight. Your reservation's on the books. And tomorrow you can, go do a yoga class and think about whether you want to renew your apartment or not. No one can do that today. And that's experiential in nature, and it's rooted in hospitality, which is where the marriage of what Margette's world and my world coming together enhances the guest experience and ultimately drives dollars to the bottom line of the owners and the merchants.
Yeah. So I want to talk about how the numbers work. So do operators pay a slice of their rent to you? Do you pay them something for how do you and they make money on this? And
Sure.
there's also ancillary benefits where if you reduce turnover, they're making money, but that's indirect.
Sure. So I'll start, and then and perfectly timed, Sam will finish. So Bilt is the payment platform for properties. We are not charging properties for those transactions. If a resident is paying with a third-party credit card, there are transaction fees that just get passed on to that renter, just like it would with any other platform. Owners and operators have the opportunity to, to change the concession game. So we kind of started the early conversation around being transactional. Sam was talking about discounts commoditizing merchants. Well, I would argue we've done the same thing in the multifamily space. So the only currency that we've had traditionally to offer some sort of incentive for a renter has been cash concessions off your rent, which ultimately turns our properties into a commodity, really reshifting the lens and thinking about it from the experience, offering residents Bilt points or travel credits, Lyft credits, experiences within their neighborhood instead of those concessions are part of what we're offering to owners and operators so they can purchase those packages. So there's a little bit of margin there. We're also sharing revenue back to them. But the biggest piece of, as Sam was talking about, the merchants being most interested in having access to and visibility of those renters in the neighborhood, it's the points where we're making where the transaction occurs.
Sam, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, so let's take that and now run with it into the neighborhood. Going back to that first touch point, I've moved into a building and I'm trying to determine what does my neighborhood consist of with restaurants, gyms, pharmacies, merchants, so on and so forth. From a merchant lens, the first thing is the Bilt ecosystem is able to target buildings around my property. And I lived this when I was running Jose Andres Group. We had restaurants in Nomad. Bilt was able to pinpoint how much people are paying in rent in the building adjacent to our restaurant. And to be able to drive traffic is step one. And when a Bilt member comes from a Bilt condo or apartment building into the restaurant, there's a commission basis that happens as one way we earn, but ultimately the merchant wins because the most valuable customer or guest that merchants have are the locals. And we are the hub to drive local traffic to merchants in the neighborhood. The other way is going back to what we were chatting about earlier is a commission basis where we're the orchestration layer as this concierge that interacts and interfaces between our members in the housing network and the Bilt dining and neighborhood concierge, meaning as we're able to end-to-end curate an experience with recognition, with loyalty, the currency that Margette mentioned with points, so on and so forth. We're now transacting end-to-end in a restaurant, so on and so forth. There's a commission basis there. Putting this model, flipping it on its head, we have a lot of merchants who are saying, look, we would love to be in the unit. And PNG on the consumer product side is a perfect example. We're sitting here saying, look, if we're able to deliver products and a welcome kit to a new renter who's come in, there are people who want access to that ecosystem. So long-winded way of saying there's a multiple different ways depending on how we transact in the neighborhood. As long as we're connecting the neighborhood to the home, there are a lot of different touch points that benefit the merchant, the landlord, and the consumer, which is why we keep saying we're a B2B2C platform.
It's funny. We bought a house in DC a year and a half ago. So you get all these welcome kits and it's just garbage. I mean, there's nothing to those things. It's a 10% discount on a thing I don't really care about. But if it did connect me so that in the neighborhood, to get the bartender to know me, that might work, although I don't drink enough for that to happen. But that reservationist should, and the reservationist keeps changing, but the app doesn't change. So they should know, oh yeah, Matt, great to see you. Welcome.
That's it. But you're honestly, Matt, hitting on what you've described is first base. You want recognition you bought a home in Georgetown. You want to be able to go to Moza. And when you sit down at the table, they know you're the most valuable customer that Moza has because you're a local. you can eat and drink and walk home.
Right.
Now imagine at the end of a meal, after your fourth meal, Moza gives you a Lyft ride back to your home.
Yeah, yeah. Because
And
they
they don't
don't.
even have to pay for it. It's just an option that they're like, Matt, we hope you enjoyed the wine that was on the house. Here's a Lyft ride home. That creates loyalty for life.
Right.
No one's doing that right now.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm going to say I'm easy to manipulate, but maybe because all the examples I give you are just be nice to me. But I'm a normal person, focus group of one in this way. So you're creating that. Okay, let's move on because we only have about 5 or 10 more minutes. Talk about different segments of the apartment business and then adjacencies to the apartment business. I wrote down luxury, affordable, students, seniors, SFR, BTR, smaller mom and pop. I'm not supposed to use that word, but smaller property owners. How do you get into those and what's next?
So we've gotten it. We started most of our partnerships with the larger owners and operators for a variety of different reasons. To get obviously from a scale perspective, but more importantly, to have great partners that some of them are investors, some are not, but to get feedback from the larger owners and operators, which is what our team did at Willowbridge, right? We're building towards something. We want to be part of this alliance and we want to help build what this alliance looks like and give you feedback on where we have challenges, where technology could better help solve challenges, where it would be great if we had more merchants in the network that were revolved more around the home, which we just announced a partnership this morning, yesterday with Bed Bath & Beyond companies. Yeah. So connecting with more and more of those places that renters are spending or any Bilt member is spending their disposable income. From there, we have actually we're partnered with ACC. So ACC is the largest operator of student housing, I believe. We actually had an ACC resident who won free rent for an entire year earlier this year. So it was part of our rent day, which was pretty exciting. And we have quite a few owners and operators in the BTR space, the SFR space. And and we touched on this early, something that I'm really proud of is the connection that we've had with affordable communities. So there are a number of affordable operators that we're partnered with. Decrease in delinquency, the increase in on-time payments, and the increase in digital payments that those operators have seen have been tremendous, much more than I actually would have expected. So that to me says that Bilt is bringing something to renters that resonates with them, a reason to pay online, a reason to pay sooner, and it's bringing a benefit to their homes and to their lives that they didn't have before Bilt.
Let's double click on one comment that you just made.
Sure.
You didn't use the word renewal, but that was the missing thing of all that you just said. It's always amazed me that the turnover in apartments is as high as it is. And if it's a commodity versus a home, turnover is going to be high. Yeah, I just got a better deal and I got a free month off. So therefore, I'm 11/12 of the way ahead, 1/12 of the way ahead. If I move, so I'm going to go move. But the frictional cost of moving and the emotional cost of moving is really high. So the emotional thing should be to stay if it feels like a home. And maybe you're increasing the feeling of neighborhoodness.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we have seen as an industry, I don't know if you talked to Jay Parsons about this, but the turnover that we've seen as an industry has decreased a bit over the last year or so. But where you're focused on hospitality, bringing something and making that emotional connection with your renters, we are seeing not just higher renewal rates, but residents who are willing to spend more on a renewal than new leases coming in the door. And when we start to see that tipping point, that's when we're seeing and identifying, okay, we're shifting from being a commodity to actually being a home and providing a home, not just selling the four walls.
Okay, this one's for Sam before we wrap up. And this one's a big leap. So there's two high turnover rates in the multifamily business. One is residence turnover of 45%. It changes between 40 and 50% per year on average, which is just nuts, given the friction of moving. But also the turnover of associates is about the same. If the business becomes more hospitality-like, does that give the chance for people to have more fulfilling careers at the current company they're with? I know this is like a wacko question, but I'm wondering if that might work.
Well, don't forget, I come from the hotel world where the average lease is 1.9 nights. So there's a lot of turnover and a lot of turnover with the associates as well in that industry. And restaurants is transitional industry. People love it because they're flexible work hours. The goal here is with higher hospitality, more, I think you used the word stickiness earlier. I had a lunch meeting today at an institution here in Coral Gables. This restaurant's been around for 40 years. Many of those managers and servers had been around probably almost 40 years, judging by the clientele, and it was still packed and having a wonderful business. If we're able to turn what is a transitional business with associates, whether they're property managers, whether they're managers at a restaurant or a hotel, and provide longevity and make this connectivity, I'm confident, and I've lived it in the hospitality space, starting in Vegas, and you've seen so many example after example of associates going from bartenders and servers to managers to area managers, all the way up to president and even CEO of these platforms. This, at the end of the day, is a business. And if we're able to support the merchants by first and foremost focusing on the guest experience and the customer, if they're happy, they're more loyal. And if they're more loyal, there's more longevity in the business, which ultimately benefits the associates working at those respective businesses.
Okay, let's make that happen. That'd be a wonderful thing for the industry. Okay, what have we missed for each of you that you would have wanted to talk about on this conversation? Because they've taken us all over the place in the discussion, and there might be some points you got to drive home and make sure we don't forget about.
Sam?
Yeah, I'll share one quick story, and I promise I know we're over time. I'll make this quick just to give you the ethos of the Bilt hospitality platform. When I started my career in the casino sector, Gary Loveman was the CEO of Harrah's, now Caesars, and the godfather of the loyalty program, Total Rewards. And at the time, I remember we were selling a casino in Vegas that drove 95% of their cash flows through the Total Rewards program, where gamers in local markets would spend in the slot houses, earn rewards, then get a free plane ride and a hotel stay in Vegas, staying at this one casino. And ultimately, they'd make their money through gambling and eating and dining. And what hit me was the power of loyalty. And I'm going to finish where you started, Matt, is when you strike that emotional chord and reward people for being loyal in their neighborhood. And if you can reward them with experiences, that has a rising tides value proposition that doesn't exist today in the neighborhood. And the fact that Encore had this incredible vision of doing good for renters is where all this started from. And now extending it into the neighborhood, that's going to create experiences. And we're fortunate to be part of connecting the home to the neighborhood, which always takes me back to where I started my career. The goal was let people eat, drink, play, spa, dine, stay, all within the four walls of their neighborhood known as the casino or the hotel, and now the cities that they live in.
Fair deal. Last question on Leading Voices is always each of your advice for a young person getting into this industry. Margette?
Oh, gosh, that's a good question. I think that, I spoke on a panel at NMHC last week, and we were actually talking specifically about recruiting in our industry and a survey that Camden had done with people who were not familiar with multifamily and how interested they would be in entering our space. I think it's really important to tell anyone entering our industry today that to lean into the hospitality. And I think as an owner and an operator or hiring someone, we should be picking or selecting people with a servant heart, with that hospitality mindset, knowing that we need to train the skill instead of looking for the skill and hoping to be able to train the heart and the hospitality.
Totally true. And also in the multifamily business, you can do that now because you've taken away the bookkeeping function from the person at the front desk. You've taken the maintenance part of it and given it to the maintenance folks. So hospitality can be the leading core of what those folks do.
It should be.
Should be. Sam?
I would take a minute for any young professional entering this space to zoom out and understand the drivers of the various constituencies that have a seat at the table. Because this is where so often, as a young professional, you get into your day job and you keep rowing forward. And if I'm on the ownership side, I'm working on models and underwriting on behalf of the owner. Learn to understand where the operator comes in. Learn to understand where the hospitality person comes in. Learn to understand what drives consumer behavior and loyalty. And if you keep turning the seat around through the various constituencies, you get a more holistic view of the experience. And too often early in our careers, we're so myopic, and I'm on the ownership side, I'm on the operator side, I'm on the brand, and that's all you know. And I think it creates a more holistic, well-rounded experience that makes you a more powerful executive to understanding who's on the other side of the table and the various angles that they're approaching the business.
Well, and certainly in the multifamily business, that resident-centric thing never was able to happen over the years, and now it can. And here's a whole new side of the business, an industry that serves directly there. So it's wonderful. Thank you both so much for being on the show. I look forward to
Appreciate you having us.
continued conversations. We need another hour, but let's do that in a year or so.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you,
us.
Matt.
I hope that you enjoyed today's episode. Please remember, if you're enjoying Leading Voices, to share an episode with a friend or get them to subscribe. If they're podcast wary and not sure how to find and subscribe on their phone, go ahead and take their phone in your hand and subscribe for them. And add another few of your favorite podcasts to their list to get them started. They'll thank you for it. You can also find episodes of the show on our website, which you can find at zrgpartners.com/leadingvoices. And if you have comments or discussion about this episode or Leading Voices in general, or if you're seeking help in real estate human capital solutions, recruiting or consulting especially, please contact me at msleppen@zrgpartners.com. Thanks for being a listener to Leading Voices.